Hey, Guoba here. The community has asked many questions on Firefly, and today we'll be answering them. From pool questions like E1 or S1, some interesting new questions, and some more questionable ones. We'll be looking at optimizing her best team and looking for alternatives for Ruan Mei and our sustained slot. A lot of questions asked, as always, were already answered in my main guide, so check that out if I didn't manage to answer yours. Anyway, like and sub if this video helps, maybe grab something to eat, and let's begin. First, I want to go and clarify some things from my previous video. I had some people ask questions about my calculations, comparing them to others. Some found similar numbers to me, whilst others found different ones. Well, first off, in my video, I mentioned that calculations and assumptions change for everyone, and this is true, again, for Firefly. One notable one is the Eon difference to signature. I found his signature being 10% better, while some found about 17%. Mine is based on a full rotation and is based on team damage, since Harmony MC, Gallagher, Ruan Mei all contribute to damage. I get 15% when comparing Firefly's personal damage increase, but since her team still contributes about 30% of the overall damage, I opted to look at the whole team's damage. It's like Black Swan Kafka teams, where neither contributes the majority of the team's damage, rather about half of the total each. For someone like Acheron, I instead look at her damage. So both calculations and results are true and correct, they are just stating different things. You can see this by reading what the chart says specifically. In my instance, it says team damage. Same goes for Eidolons. You'll see some charts show a much bigger increase than what I found. I hope that clears things up. Also, her E2 has a cooldown I forgot to mention during the Eidolons section. I did calculate it with the cooldown for the E2 damage increase, so that is completely fine. I just stupidly didn't mention it, but I corrected it in the pinned comment. Sorry for that. Now let's start with some pool-based questions. First off is the usual E1 versus S1. I find E1 to be the bigger damage increase for the team. The death percent ignore alone doesn't carry this Eidolon. Instead, I gave more SP to Trailblazer that Firefly now wasn't using. So Trailblazer's damage contribution increased, giving us a nice boost for E1. However, E1 is also nice for just turning off your brain for SP consumption, and it's also nice if you want to replace the full slot in her teams with someone else. Gallagher is insane and doesn't really need to be replaced, but it's there as an option. For example, you could replace him with Himiko in Pure Fiction, and you can do that at E0 Firefly, but now you can let Himiko use plenty of skills. E1 is also one Eidolon away from that OP E2, so that's another reason why I rate it highly. S1 is a similar damage increase and beats E1 if you do not give Trailblazer more SP or if you had a different E0 rotation. Again, assumptions change. The cone could also get more valuable when content gets stronger and faster. For now though, E1 S5 is perfectly usable and she still shines with it. Her signature is not a disgusting boost like Acheron's cone was. So, in my opinion, if you have the pools for E2 Firefly, go for E1 over S1. Otherwise, E1 versus S1 is between what you prefer, quality of life or an NFT. You can just swap Eon onto her, and the only time you couldn't is if you were using a Destruction DPS on both sides of an endgame mode and lacked a single signature cone for either DPS. With this question, I will also add on E2 and Eon versus E1 S1. I see a lot of people like to complete characters with their respective NFT and ignore her E2 for the sake of having the signature. Maybe they have trauma from Acheron's signature. Now E1 and E2 have a much more sizable increase to Firefly and her team and potential of anything her light cone could provide. If you have the pools, E2 is definitely more favored over E1 S1. You're looking at tons of extra turns over an alright upgrade to Eon. From E1 and Eon to E2, you're looking at a 37% team DPS increase, whereas S1 is 10% as shown earlier. The only benefit of the S1 over E2 would be using it on other DPS and the better banner odds, but Indelible Promise is there for any break destruction and Eon for anyone else. And finally, since we talked so much about E1, S1, E2 yada yada, I just want to state that at E0 with S5 Eon, a completely free-to-play light cone, she is still top tier. You don't need to pull more copies or the light cone if you don't want to. Continuing with the pull theme onto Ruan Mei. I did a pull order type thing in my main guide, but I feel like some more detail can help. First off, Ruan Mei E0, also known as your first copy of her, is more valuable than a Firefly S1 or E1 or E2. But now, what about Ruan Mei upgrades? Well, Ruan Mei E1 is around the same DPS increase for Firefly's team as something like Firefly S1 or E1. So if you're gluing Ruan Mei to this one team, I'd say either work, with E1 Firefly being favoured based on the previous discussion, as it would be the next step to E2 Firefly. However, Ruan Mei is an amazing harmony unit and can be plonked down anywhere. With this, we can start thinking about Ruan Mei E1 over other options. However, Ruan Mei E1 is still not the biggest increase in the world until you get serious amounts of Death Shred or Ignore. From 0% Death Ignore to 20%, it's a 12% DPS increase to the team at max ultimate uptime. But considering you don't always have her ult up, it varies. In Firefly's team, for example, it was only a 9.35% DPS increase, and that's with previously added Death Ignore from the Iron Cavalry set. I think E1 Ruan Mei is a nice universal upgrade for any team she's in, but after seeing Robin's E1 top that, maybe waiting for an even nicher break version of Ruan Mei with an OP E1 could be the play. But your pulls are your pulls, and this is just speculation. For S1 Ruan Mei, it's unnecessary in this composition outside of helping Gallagher first turn ult with a basic attack, but you can just use skill. If you want it for other teams, go ahead, but for this team, you're fine without. Now let's talk about her dream team and why each component is so magical. First off, Harmony MC. The MC brings a massive break effect buff. Whilst Firefly has plenty already, it's still very welcome. They also cause an automatic extra 30% delay on enemies when breaking toughness, allowing for easier and more often super break procs. And of course, the main reason they are completely glued to Firefly is super break. Super break scales on toughness damage you do. Firefly has some insane toughness damage multipliers and her own weakness break efficiency buff. Weakness break efficiency does not buff break damage, I've seen confusion about that, but it does buff super break damage. It is another multiplier to super break damage as it directly translates into a high toughness damage multiplier. Now Firefly has her own super breaks, albeit a 50% multiplier instead of a regular 100%. This means the normal formula, then multiplied by 0.5. What she also doesn't have is this Harmony MC A2 buff that gives super break damage from Backup Dancer, another completely unique multiplicative increase. Firefly's own super breaks do not get this, only the ones she does from Harmony MC's buff during ultimate. So Backup Dancer super breaks get a 1.2 to 1.6 unique multiplicative boost. A 1.6 times boost is like having 70% death shred on an enemy for your super break. Harmony MC is the gun and Firefly is the bullet. She uses this OP super break with her giant toughness damage as a tool to really dish out her damage. Any future super break or break supports with similar buffs will only further boost her. Finally, that talent of theirs is insane and rarely hyped. I think it's one of the best talents in the game due to how crazy it can supercharge their ultimate generation. In pure fiction, it's so stupidly strong paired with ultimate benefiting light cones, like Ruan Mei's signature, or more importantly, Dance Dance Dance. As for Ruan Mei, she is not only a 5-star limited harmony unit, but also one pretty well made for the super break and break meta. The damage percent is pretty useless in our super break team since neither break types benefit from damage percent. The weakness break efficiency, however, is a 1.5 times multiplicative boost to super break. Not only does this benefit Firefly's damage, it benefits any super breaks from Gallagher or Harmony MC. And for breaks, it gets you a 1.5 times boost to toughness damage, which means quicker breaks, but no damage increase. Considering Firefly has 50% weakness break efficiency in her kit, it's only a 1.333 times boost to super break damage, but regardless, the two synergize so well together to not only delete toughness bars, but also HP bars. Ruan Mei also gives 10% speed, which helps us hit the 150 speed breakpoint with no substats on her best gear and speed boots. But it also helps us take more actions in general for the whole team. It lets us even go towards the potential 165 speed breakpoint for zero cycling. The small break effect buff is cool I guess, but Ruan Mei's ult is a 1.25 times boost to breaks and super breaks as well as any kit damage for the whole team. And of course, Ruan Mei provides some decent break damage of her own when we break enemies or when they recover and take additional damage. In MOC it's not too amazing, but in pure fiction it's definitely noticeable. And we can't forget the nuke she drops in Simulated Universe. Gallagher is the final piece of the puzzle. Whilst replaceable if you don't want to build him or want to run other comps like in pure fiction, there are reasons he's so insane. Gallagher contributes to an insane amount of fire toughness damage, essential for getting Firefly to super breaks quicker, but also making sure her earlier actions are super breaks too, since she no longer has to spend multiple actions breaking. With E6 Gallagher and Ruan Mei's skill, he can do 300 toughness damage to a single target, not to mention some AoE, with a single basic into ult into enhanced basic, which is more valuable than 1.5 Firefly turns worth of toughness damage. This is why he is so strong. The fact that he can hit AoE enemies too on ult means Firefly's 3-target attack pattern isn't a problem. Gallagher can deal with the rest. He can first turn ultimate starting from E1, meaning for a very quick jump start to Firefly's damage. He applies break damage vulnerability, and whilst a bit diluted, it's still a straight up big damage increase to everything break. His healing is pretty decent, and any sustain issues become no problem when considering the massive delays of the core break team. His SP generation is the best in the game among sustains, essential for an E0 Firefly, but still useful for an E1 Firefly to let Harmony MC spam as much SP as they want. If you don't understand why, it's because he can generate 1 SP a turn like usual, but every ultimate is a free 100% advance, meaning an extra turn for 2 SP generated per ultimate turn. And finally, his super break damage is very powerful due to those high toughness damage multipliers, as well as innate weakness break efficiency at E6, but you don't need E6 for him to shine. Now let's go over them and see what we'd want to build. On Harmony MC we want 4 Watchmaker. They get a 3-turn ult and can often get fast ultimates, meaning they have priority on this 4-piece. They can also run the new Iron Cavalry set, but it's a negligible damage increase overall to the team. They want 2 Talia from pre 2.3, and if you really plan to glue them to only Firefly, then 2 Forge is a minor upgrade. HBO defense, speed, HBO defense, and break or energy rope. Lycans will see you wanting Memories of the Past or Dance 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 in pure fiction. In my guide I also didn't put Ruan Mei's signature because I don't want people pulling a 5-star cone for a small quality of life upgrade on a free unit, but Ruan Mei's signature is also a great option for them. As for Memories of the Past, you'll ideally want S5, but there's a lot of bonus energy in their kit that lower superimpositions will be okay for now. Just work on getting that first turn ultimate though, which will be much easier with the new E6 we are getting. Ruan Mei also doesn't mind 4 Watchmaker. Despite 4 Watchmaker not stacking, it still refreshes on ultimate casting, and there's not really anything else to run on her. You can run 4 Hacker Space, but the speed buff is very negligible. 4 Thief is also fine. If you aren't running Vonwhack and are having trouble getting her to be first, then I'd run at least 2 Hacker. Do you want 2 Vonwhack or 2 Paniconi for the 3-turn ult with S5 memories or cogs? HBO def, speed, HBO def, and energy for main stats. Lycans are Memories of the Past S5, cogs S5, or her signature again. If you have only 1 S5 memories, give that to Harmony MC and give her cogs. Gallagher will want a combo of 2 Hacker with a 2-piece break set or Passerby. He can use the new Iron Cavalry set too, but again, it's a negligible increase in damage. If you want to farm 3 whole sets because the units can use it, go ahead I guess, but I'm getting my Firefly set and beelining out of there. For 2-piece, it's Talia or Forge. Forge if glued to Firefly, Talia if not. Fleet also works, but I saw Talia ended up being better for overall team damage in my simulations, as the damage he gained was higher than the damage Firefly gained from Fleet, but both work. Vonwhack or Paniconi can be used for a fast non-energy rope rotation, but in my opinion he will take damage by then, or he got a kill from super break, or you just run energy rope because there's so much break effect buffing in this team. So HBO def, speed, HBO def, and energy rope, with break being possible, but only contributing some damage rather than potentially more SP and toughness damage with faster ultimates. His Lycans can be between multiplication, quid pro quo, and post-op. Multiplication is my favorite and has been since 1.0, it will give him an undiluted 1.25 times speed boost. If he has 160 speed and basic attacks, his next turn now lets him act as if he had 200 speed. It's very great for chasing that 210 speed Firefly and giving her SP, as well as letting Harmony MC use skill more often. Quid Pro Quo with a bunch of RNG and some Firefly kills can net you a 1-turn Firefly ult, but this is only relevant for one cycling the second wave. She is going to have 3 enhanced skills on the first cycle anyway, for a possible 0 cycle clear, and getting her ult or not only matters on a 1 cycle clear. Since he does get 2 turns back to back, he can give more Quid Pro Quo procs than any other healer, and you can manipulate it somewhat, but it requires ruining your first Firefly turn. It can also be useful for other teammates, but I'd rather just use multiplication. What is real finally isn't really relevant since his sustain is very strong and easy in this team, and the break effect buff is whatever compared to the buffs from Quid Pro Quo or multiplication. Turn order, like stated before, is Ruan Mei, then Harmony MC, then Gallagher or Firefly. Also, if they have Watchmaker, save it for Firefly's turn for extra buff duration. Gallagher can first turn ult so he can basic or skill depending, into ult, into enhanced basic for lots of free toughness damage. If he's behind Firefly, you can do the Quid Pro Quo Force Energy strategy, where you ult after her turn and sack an enhanced skill for that 1-turn ult for wave 2. Now, after that lengthy discussion on her teams, comes the inevitable talk about Ruan Mei and her alternatives. Can I run Bronya? Can I run E2 Bronya? Can I run Pella? Can I run Asta? You are free to run all of them and test them in MOC before pulling Ruan Mei. I've tested a bunch of supports and simulated a bunch of them too. First off, I'll say that attack percent buffs are overvalued and overhyped right now. The conversion is there and it's nice, but since Firefly gets so much already, it's very diluted and doesn't actually amount to a large gain in overall damage. For example, if I give Firefly a permanent 100% attack in her normal team, we only get a 10% team damage increase. Another thing to mention is that with every cool speed breakpoint you can hit for a potential Ruan Mei replacement, just remember you are losing that 10% speed buff. So breakpoints like 165 and maybe even higher are even trickier to hit. So I'll be going through supports and talking about the potential of replacing Ruan Mei with them. Asta helps with toughness damage, has speed buffs for the whole team to gain more actions, and has a decent attack percent buff. She's quite often mentioned as a Ruan Mei replacement. However, her speed buff will not last on Firefly, since she will now be acting at an insane 273 speed for 2 turns, and Asta cannot regenerate it fast enough to keep it up for every enhanced Firefly action. Therefore, you cannot hit the 280 speed breakpoint on Firefly outside of weird dance shenanigans. Robin's attack buff doesn't work for Firefly's break effect conversion due to it being an uncapped conversion from what I can tell, so you miss out on that. Robin's advance does mean an extra combustion turn, but that's about it. Bronya and Sparkle give bonus actions, but bonus actions cannot compare to the team-wide weakness break efficiency. They also don't give the same power that a 25% res pen ultimate does. I mentioned both in my guide, which some people missed. I'll try to make that clearer next time. Anyway, 1.5 times the action is very nice, but remember Bronya's 100% advance is not ever going to be 100% because Firefly is acting at least 210 speed optimally. So without a 209 speed Bronya, Sparkle's advance can end up being just as powerful. E2 Bronya doesn't make things better unless you specifically play around a weird niche breakpoint that is too specific to put here. You'd also want E1 Firefly to use either of them SP-wise, and at that point, just pull E0 Ruan Mei instead. Bronya does enable a 1-turn ult at 160 speed like a Quid Pro Quo Gallagher would do, which is a cool benefit, but you'd have to clear in 1 cycle. Hanya would need an insane amount of speed on top of a Dance 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 S5 and her E4 to potentially get to the 280 speed Firefly breakpoint. I think Firefly needs like 176 speed with a 200 speed Hanya according to Lysara. So you could run this as your 4th slot over Gallagher, but good luck getting 36 speed on substats on Firefly if you replace Ruan Mei with Hanya. Maybe 2 S5 dances are needed for more reasonable speed requirements, but that's 2 S5 dances. Anyway, Lysara will probably have a video on it. Tingyun can enable a 1-turn ultimate for Firefly if you want, and her speed buff helps for the 165 breakpoint, but again, nowhere near Ruan Mei level for Firefly. Also, a 1-turn ultimate isn't comparable to having Gallagher save a whole turn or 2 worth of toughness damage for Firefly either. Yukong is Yukong. If Firefly could use crit very well, then Yukong would be kinda cool, I'm not gonna lie. since her bowstring could buff multiple Firefly turns in a row thanks to her high speed. But the attack percent buff is whatever due to dilution, and we don't care for the crit. Pella is, I'd say, A tier or better on replacing Ruan Mei. The def percent shred is very nice for break and super break. She also consumes less SP than Ruan Mei, allowing for easier Harmony MC skill usage and Firefly skill usage at E0. She's still weaker than Ruan Mei of course, but I'd say it's between Aster or Pella for the Ruan Mei replacement plan. For replacing Gallagher, she's also very potent, definitely one of the strongest Gallagher replacements, and your Firefly damage will hit very high heights. Playing as fast as Gallagher though depends on how fast you can break without him. And so Wolf works too like a single target Pella, with stronger single target damage amp but rougher SP consumption. Now a few peeps Steam posted Firefly versus weakness locking enemies, but I think every damage archetype has their counter and favoured style. Like the death meme gets rolled by damage over time. The Aventurine boss counters supports that don't attack, or low FRS compositions, etc. Weakness locking enemies aren't very common, and the ones that are have a fine way of being dealt with. For example, Argenti in Apocalyptic Shadow has a lot of it, but Firefly still whips him way above the 3-star time limit. I think they do counter Firefly though, and any other break DPS, but all you have to do is just not run her versus them if you can't deal with it, and just bring another team. That's what our many team comps are for after all. Also there's the topic of replacing her main stats. You should nearly never replace her speed boots, and definitely not her break rope. As for the chest and orb however, it's a bit weird. Because her team does a ton of damage too, and she gets diluted in break and thus attack percent, the attack percent chest and orb can be replaced. It is in every case a damage loss though. For example, attack chest to crit chest is a damage lost, and attack orb to fire orb is too, so I don't see the point in those. However, if you want to run a defensive def piece for example, you may. However, I have never come close to dying with her, and even in Apocalyptic Shadow, I have never needed to run a defensive main stat. So I'm letting you know it's possible, but not needed in my experience. Should you level skill? Yes. The damage scaling is whatever, but the energy gain scales with it too. It counters energy reducing mechanics like the TVs and Aventurine, and any future enemy like that. You will get energy from kills that can also counter energy drain, but I'd rather just invest a bit more to never need to worry about it rather than not. It's quite niche instances, but you might as well be safe for future mechanics. You don't need to level the basics anyway, so you can save on resources with that, and leveling talent is up to you, but I prefer having it to sometimes RNG my way out of scary situations. Should you run a sub DPS with Firefly? Outside of pure fiction with someone like Himiko, I do not think so. They'd be contesting the SP, leaving either with minimal impact. She is a super break hyper carry to focus on her rather than someone else. And replacing Ruan Mei on Harmony MC with them would be a massive loss, with Gallagher being stronger in the 4th slot anyway. Guoba was Boothill powercrept. Insert clip of Boothill doing 1.2 million damage outside of SimUni at E0. No, Boothill is not powercrept. He's still stronger in single target, as that's his job as a hunt character, and if you want the blast attacks from Firefly in a fight, then she is stronger. She's also more usable in pure fiction, but I think Boothill will be doing fine as he can excel in MOC and Apocalyptic Shadow. And he technically has more flexibility in team compositions over Firefly. Either way, every new super break support can benefit either unit, and any break support could too. Both are very strong, and how the other unit performs shouldn't matter, since both can clear endgame content very well. If you like Firefly, pull her. If you prefer Boothill, pull him. There's no need to compare and cause needless toxicity. They are both awesome characters, in an awesome new team archetype, in an awesome video game that we all love, and both are cute. And on that topic of DPS comparisons, Acheron. I think both are top tier, and they do different things, have different ways of doing damage, and do it at different intervals. Acheron does a massive burst every ultimate, and you get giant damage per screenshot numbers for big dopamine. But Firefly does incredible bursts every enhanced skill versus broken enemies, and she does it at 210 speed rather than the 100 or so speed you might have Acheron at. So Acheron does big bursts, and Firefly has to ramp up toughness damage and then sends out more frequent but slightly weaker bursts. Both are top tier, pull whoever you prefer. They use different supports and both are cute. And finally, will she be powercrept or do you think she's future-proof? I think since she is our first limited super rare DPS and the only one with the mechanic in her kit outside of Harmony MC, she can scale just fine into the future. She is, however, not the core of an archetype like Kafka is. So inevitably in 3.x we may have a fire unit that does just a bit better, but worrying about something like that will ensure you never pull again. Having stronger and more unique kits is the way forward in a game where combat is pretty much everything, or else we'd end up having 20 Zealer tier characters back to back where the game state would be very stale. And Zealer is still relevant despite such strong new kits, so I think Firefly will do just fine. Thanks to my amazing YouTube members, thanks for watching, and have a Guoba day.